Yeah, good afternoon. So my name is Maarten van Aalst. I'm director of the Red Cross Red Crescent Climate Centre, which is one of the partners for Resilience. So that's the alliance I represent here. A partnership of a number of civil society organizations across the world, across all continents, working on resilience, bridging humanitarian response. So we've got organizations that have traditionally responded to disasters like the Red Cross, but also preventing disasters, preparing in advance for disasters. Organizations working on local development to help local people get more resilient to shocks and stresses, as well as working on ecosystems, so trying to create a local environment that helps us deal with shocks and stresses better. Yeah, climate resilience, it's an awkward word that doesn't translate well into many languages. But I think what it means is that we need to look at people's ability to cope with an increasingly variable climate. So we've been talking about adaptation to climate change, which is also fairly abstract, but sort of suggests that you look at what's changing just due to climate and you try and deal with that change. Resilience is a bit broader than that, I would say, and it really focuses at people's ability to cope with all kinds of shocks and stresses. So in our case, that might be a flood or a drought. It might also be changing of seasons and farmers not knowing when to plant. And the idea is that by making them resilient, they're able to better deal with all those shocks and stresses and actually, on the one hand be safe because we're trying to reduce humanitarian impacts, but on the other hand be prosperous and have good economic development. Yeah, so the partners are a global network of civil society organizations, often particularly working at the local level. And the Alliance has already been operating since 2010 and has been working across 10 countries. And so far we've reached over 500,000 people, working with them on local livelihoods, on building small disaster preparedness projects, little dams to protect villages, but also evacuation plans. But importantly also working on the local environment. So for instance, when a village is at risk of flooding, looking at the upstream river basin and seeing if we can restore the ecosystems there so that the floods don't come down as violently. Yeah, so this is where it gets interesting. Our experience in the first phase was really about that local implementation, and it's what our organizations are really good at, working with local communities to help them strengthen their resilience. But we also realized that 500,000 people is on the one hand fantastic, it's on the other hand way too small, looking at all the other people that are facing these shocks and stresses. And there's only so much we can do. So we've always been strong working in partnerships, but we also want to work more strongly with governments. So we have already been working with local governments in many cases, local mayors, district governors, but we're working increasingly also on getting these themes integrated into the national adaptation plans, for instance, and recognized in the global adaptation goals of the Paris Agreement. So that's basically where it comes down to. We've got the Paris Agreement with two pillars: mitigation to avoid risks from getting out of hand in the long term, and adaptation to deal with the risks that are changing today already. And our contribution, Partners for Resilience, building resilience locally, is a key component of that second pillar of the Paris Agreement.